we're in the middle of the Great Resignation, so we know that decent work is a massive issue. We're seeing that workers are hard to come by because terms of employment, conditions, purpose is playing a big role. And we're also seeing, and I know that this is going to be a big focus of the 2 days, we've also seen how the Latino community and the Hispanic members of our communities have shown up and been represented, and we're really in that front line of supporting everyone in this process. So I'm going to slightly turn to our academic in the room, and John, ask you a little bit just, what is decent work? I mean, you've been involved in this process, so kick us off by defining this.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. That is not a Hispanic response. If I say good afternoon, I want to hear it. All right. Okay, that's why I moved from Boston to Miami, to move from old America to new America. Okay. Now, just by way of background, decent work. Decent work is a concept that was developed by the International Labor Organization, the ILO, in 1999. And there were 4 pillars to what they defined as decent work. The most important, I think, for our discussion today was pillar 1, which is employment creation and enterprise development. And I think in the context of COVID, you know, one of the things that's really important to note is that it's, as you know, now a buyer's market from the point of view of the workforce, and especially the Hispanic workforce. And having been in the last few weeks a victim of the Great Resignation myself, having lost 4 people that I didn't want to lose, I'm looking in the mirror myself and asking, you know, am I providing the new definition of decent work for the people that I want to recruit and retain? And when I think about what that might mean, I think it can be summed up in the following terms. I want to work for who I want and who has a purpose that reflects my sense of purpose. I want to work when I want to work. I want to work where I want to work, and I want to work for how much I want to work for. That is empowerment, and I think more and more employees of major companies are thinking along those lines, and companies and organizations like mine are going to have to increasingly reflect on what decent work means from the point of view of people that we want to recruit and retain. So let me leave it there for the moment.
That's a fantastic introduction. Thank you, John. And one of the things that you've made me think about is that very often to get to work, you've actually got to go through a process of qualifying and getting to work. And are we at this stage where we're finally going to see the redefinition, where we're no longer, I mean, kudos to everyone that wants to go to graduate school. I'm not going to, I'm a PhD dropout proudly. It was the best thing I did. But is this the stage where, you know, we're recognizing that there are different career paths and that we've got to satisfy them and get those on the right track? And I know, Mike, you've got ideas about this and strong views. So what are we expecting? What should we see and what should we be working towards?
Yeah, so for us at IBM, we started down a path about 5 years ago, actually, taking a step back and asking the question, do we really need all of the qualifications that have been just standard for us? And at that point in time, 90% of our jobs required 4-year degrees. What we found is that the answer is no, we don't. So today, 50% of our jobs now require 4-year degrees. Now that in and of itself, the statistic is interesting, but there's more to the story behind it, which is where do you go to find the candidates? And if you're only looking at people with undergraduate degrees, in the case of the Hispanic community, that's only 16%, 16% of the overall population, which means 84% of that population, that's the fastest growing, as we've talked about today, is gone. So with that, there are apprenticeship programs, as old as time, yet we don't typically do it today. So we've got apprenticeship programs. We've actually spent $60 million over the last 3 years bringing on and paying people to learn and building the skill by doing. So that's one. A second is a program that we started actually here in Brooklyn 10 years ago now that's called Pathway to Technologies. And this, in its essence, is a phenomenal story around public and private partnership. So we started in Brooklyn. The goal is to create both a high school and a 2-year postgraduate degree, and it's up to the students. The schools are typically in underrepresented neighborhoods. 90% of the students are underrepresented minorities, mostly Black and Hispanic. And part of the program is internships, so they get the real-world experience, and then coming out, they get full-time jobs. And by now, we've got more than 100 of those schools across the U.S., 240 around the world. We have 600 companies, besides IBM, that are partnering with us and with these schools. And the results start to speak for themselves, as if you look at Dallas, for those of you here from Dallas, 30% of those students have internships just between IBM and American Airlines. Forget about all the other companies that are in Dallas. So you start to multiply that by one company, how many students, what the education is, and then this supply and demand dynamic and skills, especially around technology, which I think just about every single industry today requires technology in some way, shape, or form. The demand far outstrips the supply.
I'm fascinated. I want to do a quick pulse check. How many of your companies actually require and check academic qualifications? Raise your hands. Oh, this is so much better than I expected. We're getting there. And how many of you actually offer up internships to the Hispanic community that are kind of more broad and diverse? Okay. So I think this is amazing
Progress.
to see. Yeah, we're really making a lot of progress in this one. I'm really excited by this one. Mark, I'm going to turn to you next, because I think one of the other things that we've seen is in this environment, we're actually seeing that traditional job path and how you get to a job or what that job means is different. What are your priorities at the moment where you're sitting, and you play a particular role looking at things from a, I presume, policy setting lens and also helping small businesses? Would love your take on what is the big priority we should be focusing on.
Thank you. First and foremost, it's great to be with familia again in person. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you. We are all human. First, I'd like for all small business owners and entrepreneurs, Latino and Latina entrepreneurs in the room to stand. Please, please stand. This you should be applauded and commended, because we're talking about economic growth, and that's what you represent, is economic growth. I hope you heard Marlene Orozco's presentation earlier on the state of Latino entrepreneurship, and you heard about the rising rate of entrepreneurs in this segment. It is absolutely fueling our economy. But then COVID happened. And I'll tell you, from our Office of Advocacy at the Small Business Administration, we saw in the first quarter of 2020 that Latinx business starts went down over 30%. That is alarming. Familia, that is alarming. So, a couple of things. I'm thrilled and energized to be here, and I'm happy to report, because you've got to look like who you represent, right? I'm happy to report that at the Small Business Administration, for the first time in history, there's 3 Latinos and Latinas as top SBA officials. And not only that, we have a diverse set of leaders at the SBA, and President Biden has one of the most diverse, if not the most diverse, cabinet in U.S. history. And my boss, Administrator Isabela Casillas Guzman, is the highest-ranking Latina on President Biden's cabinet. Now that I say that, it's one thing to mention that as a headline, but it's a whole nother to walk the talk. And that's what we're doing right now. In fact, our Administrator Guzman is right now in the streets of Broadway, because but for the Shuttered Venues Operators Grant, there'd be some shows that would still be siloed and actually closed down. So she is actually with us today in New York City. But what I'd like to say in terms of economic growth is we've got to walk the talk in supporting our Latino and Latina entrepreneurs. That group that you just saw, Claudia, you're an entrepreneur yourself. You've struggled through the challenges but met them head on. Also, we share that we've lost, parents to COVID. I lost my dad to COVID-19, almost lost my mom at the same time in the summer of 2020. All that said is the grit and ganas and resilience of this group. You heard the research earlier from Marlene at the Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative. Latino and Latina entrepreneurs have been through crises before, but this is an unforeseen circumstance that we've never gone through. Latino and Latina entrepreneurs rose to the occasion during the Great Recession, right? Rose to the occasion in different weather catastrophes that have riddled the United States, including Puerto Rico and the 2 hurricanes, most notably, and Puerto Rican entrepreneurs that saved the day there. And we'll do the same in COVID-19, but it's going to be moving a mountain. We got to do it together. So the last thing I'll say, because we got to talk in sound bites, is we're not a monolith. We're not a monolith. That there's all sorts of Latino and Latina entrepreneurs. Of course, we love our service sector and construction companies. What would we do without them? But there are Latina millennial tech founders in the Silicon Valley, right? There's folks transforming the manufacturing industry like Ryan Bethencourt, Latino, who's in the vegan dog food business, right? And he runs one of the largest bioaccelerators in the world. We have Tony Aguilar here that's probably eliminating student debt as we talk right now. We have Maria Rios back there, the first Latina multi-million-dollar company in U.S. history. So thank you, Maria. But we also have the super majority of our non-employer firms, over 98%, 99%, that are solo entrepreneurs. And if we don't support them through action on the ground, then we're missing out on a big economic opportunity.
Mark, we're all geared up. We're going to go out and do great things from here. This is an action-driven session. We vote for Mark. Do we start the campaign now? I'm going to turn the attention to Cesar, just because one of the things that you said, Mark, that it really resonated with me was the reflection, the looking like the people that you're trying to serve. And I think, Cesar, American Family Insurance, you've got a great track record of that. We'd love to hear that as a tangible example, but also one that talks and addresses the points that have been made earlier and what John said about working for companies with purpose.
Well, great, and thank you for teeing that up. I really appreciate it. Very nice. No, I think it's corporations, it's incumbent. It's a business imperative, right? But at the same time, it's about being authentic, and it's about being intentional, right? So at American Family, we want to be the most trusted and valued customer-driven insurance company, which means your customers all deserve the exact same quality experience, regardless. It's also even a little more important than that. If you trust your people and empower them to take the lead, they will move mountains for the organization. And so we've got a great example here alone. We've got a Spanish-speaking unit of over 70 Spanish language employees that provide service. I have the opportunity to work with about 450 of the best insurance professionals in the business, providing 24/7 care for our customers. But Cesar Morales, who is a hub leader in Phoenix, came forward with that. Give him a round of applause. Came forward with a great idea and a great thought, and it was incredible. He said he remembered when he was in banking that he would have to do the translations for the banks, and immediately customers who spoke Spanish got treated differently than non-Spanish speaking customers. There's big attention. Come over here and translate. I remember being a business owner. I was started as an agent with American Family and taking Hispanic families to the bank to get them a checking account so they can get insurance. And I remember how different that feeling was, and so that really resonated with me, and we said, go with it, Cesar, go crazy. And so we've created an entire unit of 70 employees. The entire management team is Hispanic. It's created opportunities in my division where we're the gateway to a Fortune 500 company of meaningful work, licensed insurance professionals coming to American Family. Right now, in my care center, we're 32% RE diverse, largely Hispanic. And it's great to see great leadership that does that. And that's extended beyond the care center at this point. It's moved into our claim services, and Cesar's done a lot of work across all of our operating companies. So the lessons that we've learned at American Family in our brand, we're taking across to all of our operating companies across our enterprise.
I'm going to park that idea because I want us to talk later about how we let Caesar go crazy and wild and multiply that across companies, because I think that's what we need, lots of Caesars across the board. But I do want to come back to Agustina, because one of the things that we haven't talked about is, you know, the gender dimension. Women-owned businesses, we know, can drive the economy. We were making great progress on the women's equality agenda, and then COVID hit. And we saw the Great She-Cession, and we saw that women were disproportionately affected, but Latina women were overall most impacted by the unemployment rate, with 19%. At Goldman Sachs, you do amazing work supporting women entrepreneurs, but I don't want you to be constrained to that. But what do we need to do around addressing that really important sector of the population that has picked up that care burden?
It's a really serious matter, and at Goldman Sachs, I have the pleasure of leading the Latin American team, so I get to impact communities and I impact my clients. So from a product standpoint, we're seeking change and trying to come up with concrete commitments from our organizations, our clients, and our partners to implement this. And a lot of what we've been doing is coming up with products that help reach, you know, all these women in the region, not just entrepreneurs, but also business leaders, family owners, and increased representation of women in all these organizations like we're doing in the US. Obviously, Latin America is behind. I mean, many of you are already implementing many of these things in your organizations. You are talking about diversity and inclusion. That's not necessarily something that is being discussed in the region. So I have this unique opportunity to work with my clients, and when we are selecting business, really try to walk the talk, to your point, and really think about business selection with these metrics in our minds. And gender lens is certainly one of them, apart from, you know, inclusive growth and the environment. But the second thing is, what can we do to help these entrepreneurs, which being probably female entrepreneurs, the most effective group in Latin America. Goldman came up with a program in 2008 called Goldman Sachs 10,000 Women. And the idea, as its name clearly states, was basically to bring women entrepreneurs from emerging markets to New York to train them. Because many times, and I don't know how many of you were in a room thinking, why am I here? Is it, you know, the right meeting for me? Are they gonna believe me? Women entrepreneurs in the region face this all the time. Not just when you're trying to fit in as a minority in the US, but when you are among your peers in Latin America. It's so hard for female entrepreneurs. So the first thing we're trying to do is train them. We brought them to New York, and we realized 10,000 was a small target, and not every female entrepreneur could fly to the US to be trained, right? They need to care for their families, they need to care for their companies. So we uploaded this content, 10 modules of 3 hours each approximately, in Coursera. Last year, we launched it in Spanish and Portuguese. So I'm asking from all of you to communicate this to our communities, organizations. This is free. It's like a mini MBA for women entrepreneurs in the region. Once they graduate from this 10 modules program called Goldman Sachs 10,000 Women, they reach coaching, they can get access to funding, and there's one thing we don't do very well, which is making this available and known by all these communities in Latin America. So I trust all of you will be helping me communicate to help female entrepreneurs in the region.
I see John has a pressing point.
So I want to just, in the same spirit, announce to everybody in this room that we at University of Miami Herbert Business School, thanks to the generosity of a Venezuelan immigrant as well as a Nicaraguan immigrant, her husband, we have a new Latina entrepreneurship accelerator boot camp that we have launched. The first group will be in May of next year. This is for Latina college women from anywhere in the world. It's fully funded. If you have individuals whom you know in your networks who would be aspirational and qualify for this program, in other words, they have to have an entrepreneurial spirit, an idea that they want to accelerate the development of. Those are women that we are looking for this program. So please email me or contact me on LinkedIn and give me your nominations. The first program will run in May of next year. I do want to underscore just one final point in this regard, and that is that I often hear that Latino and Hispanic citizens and so forth are not philanthropic, and that has not been my experience at all. That where there is an opportunity to clearly advance the development of people in the Hispanic community, young people in particular, that our Hispanic friends step forward straight away with support for these initiatives. So I want to thank everybody in this room who is not only doing something to create jobs, but also philanthropically inclined to support others who may have initiatives that do the same thing.
Thank you. Thank you, University of Miami, and thank you to your donors. That's so impressive. This is like, I always find that the Hispanic Summit is a little bit like our New Year resolutions in advance. So this is what I want to hear from all of you. We have like 1 minute. What are you going to focus on in 2022? I see excitement.
Yes. So the SBA, we super scaled out of urgency from a portfolio of $40 billion to over $1.1 trillion. And so, yes, and part of that was the Paycheck Protection Program. Part of that was our Restaurant Revitalization Fund, the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. And most recently, I'm very excited that I have the chance to lead along with a dedicated team, and you're looking at one of them right there, Shaylee Hallway. Thank you, Senior Advisor. You're phenomenal, and a dedicated team. We're in charge of a $100 million Community Navigator pilot program. And part of that is to meet small businesses where they are, and we have high expectations for this program. We want it to grow into a $1 billion program. So we're excited to serve the Latino and Latina community with the Community Navigator pilot starting this month in 2021 for 2 years, and then beyond that, looking at other solutions.
You're getting ahead of 2022. That's exciting.
That's right.
Caesar, how are we unleashing more Caesars here? I want to know.
Well, I think what we're looking at right now, so American Family, we believe the most important thing are people's dreams. And so what we're focused on in 2022 is expanding our protection of dreams into the Hispanic community deeper than we've ever had before. That's with local representation of small business owners as insurance agents in our 19 states. And we'll be expanding our care center operations to support that. So I'll be adding about 150 positions next year in our care center, and they can be anywhere in the United States. The pandemic has allowed us to move to a fully work from home. So if you know anybody that's interested and speaks Spanish, please go to www.amfam.com/careers to apply today.
I love this action-oriented group. This is the best. Agostina, you've already told us so much that you're doing, but give us another idea, another hint for 2022.
I want concrete commitments. We're talking a lot, and I want 2022 to be rebuilding Latin America better, not just looking at inclusion in the US, but also actually helping the region with fundraising, with hiring people, with mentoring women. It was really hard. The first time I got into a plane to come to the US was to interview on Wall Street. That was really hard. I don't want women and Latinos to have to go through the same thing I went through. It's easier when you do an MBA, you have some friends, you have time to adjust to the language, the culture, you get trained on how to interview. I want to see concrete steps from Goldman and from Wall Street, just hiring more women and really setting those metrics and then being accountable for them.
I love this. Mike, metrics, data.
Yes, I'll build on Agostina's point on this piece about holding people accountable. Right? So for us at IBM, we've published all of our metrics around underrepresented minorities, including Hispanics, and update them on a regular basis. That's a good start. More importantly, we actually tie every single executive in the company, their compensation, to us improving those metrics year on year. So not only are we talking the talk, but we're walking the walk, and I'd encourage all of you in this room who have some amount of control and influence, put your money where your mouth is.
I love that. I think the tying up that to the top of the decision is actually really key. And again, I'm going to do my own little scientific data poll here. How many companies that you work for actually reward senior leadership for diversity and inclusion? Okay, we're getting there. This is actually pretty, I'm very, very, very heartened by all the responses that we've seen. I'm going to give mine because I feel I have on this accountability panel something to do. APCO Worldwide is a majority women-owned, Latina women-founded firm. So we have a very strong commitment to this. We are going to follow Agostina's pledge in terms of making sure that we're supporting women entrepreneurs. As a women-owned firm, for those of you that have not looked into procurement and supporting, and we heard that earlier, I really could not do enough to emphasize the importance of focusing on procurement and making sure that you're opening up your supply chain and all your vendors and that you are giving priority and, like you said, putting your money where your mouth is. So we are looking to make sure that all of our supply chain is actually diversified in that way.
I have some more good news on that front. Later this month, or possibly in January, we are launching our government contracting journey on our Ascent platform that comes out of my office, the Office of Entrepreneurial Development. Ascent is a women's business online curriculum. So we are launching a very substantive government contracting journey that will display and show you with toolkits and those things that matter in terms of application on how to get certified and procure from the federal government.
Fantastic. John, I'm loving that you set the scene with that academic picture, but I see that you have another thought.
Well, I think trust is really very important. We were talking about that this morning, and I'm a great believer in delegation, and especially during COVID, I found that it was actually very beneficial to think about delegating further rather than doing the normal thing, which is to tighten control. Because whenever there's a crisis, the usual reaction is, let me get a grip on this, and top management tries to tighten things up, when in fact the best solution is to decentralize, because people on the front line have the imagination and creativity to be able to solve the problems at hand. So I just want to mention one thing in relation to this delegation and trust. When I moved from Boston to Miami, in Boston I'd never had any Latina reports at all, never experienced any Hispanic direct reports. And I went to Miami, and what I discovered was that Latinas are especially trustworthy. And so I have 10 direct reports on the staff side of the house, and 8 out of the 10 are Latinas. And just for balance, I have 1 Chinese and 1 Israeli. But
you're in good hands.
I have absolutely no one reporting to me who looks like me. And that's probably a very good thing for the organization. So I think, trusting Latinas in particular, and we've heard earlier how much they're challenged in terms of employment and so forth. In my experience, it's been phenomenal. And the one person who I have given most accolades to in the last year and a half, we have a janitorial service supplier called JBM out of Philadelphia. And there is a lady, Julietta, who next to me was in the building sanitizing and cleaning that building that we have our school in every day for the last year and a half, except a few weeks when the university was totally shut. And she is a single parent from El Salvador with 2 children who are now both going to Miami-Dade College. It is a phenomenal story, and I think that the respect that we as leaders can show to all of those folks, Hispanic or not, but especially to the Juliettas of the world, that is not just a matter of empowerment, it's a matter of respect and trust in people at the very lowest income levels in our organizations.
John, thank you for closing us off in that amazing way. You know, a decent workforce is about being decent, it's about being trustworthy, it's about being respectful for everyone. I think we all know who the unsung heroes of the pandemic were. We're going to try and work with them, we're going to try and lift them up. This is what this is all about. We're celebrating nurses throughout, but we're also celebrating the Julietas and all the other people that supported us during the pandemic, and looking forward to hearing all these pledges. This was an action-led panel. I hope you all took notes and you're all going to go out and start your New Year's resolution now about how you're going to support the Hispanic community into making sure that everyone has decent work, and look forward to hearing the results next year. Thank you, everyone. And thanks.